Thank you for watching QTV with the news. My name is Diana Sumbwe. We take a look at stories making headlines. Government has been advised to take seriously the latest International Monetary Fund (IMF) financial stability report, which has warned of dangerous undercurrents that threaten the global economy. Home Affairs Minister Stephen Kampyongo says the government will get to the bottom of what led to the fracas at the University of Zambia last Thursday, leaving one student dead. And WaterAid Zambia has observed that the 2019 national budget has very limited measures aimed at addressing the plight of people living in poverty. And now the news in detail. Government has been advised to take seriously the latest International Monetary Fund (IMF) financial stability report, which has warned of a potential global financial crisis. The latest IMF's financial stability report has cited dangerous undercurrents, growing trade tensions between the US and China, and disorderly Brexit as the pricing threats to the world economy. Former Minister of Finance Ngandu Magande says the latest IMF global economic forecast calls for alertness on the part of the Zambian government. Mr. Magande, who was the Minister of Finance during the 2008 financial crisis, says government must commit to the implementation of the austerity measures it announced 4 months ago. In an interview with QTV News by telephone, Mr. Magande has recalled that during his time as Finance Minister in 2008, austerity measures included reducing salaries of senior government officials. Mr. Magande says he is then left to wonder how the announced austerity measures will perform if the Patriotic Front government is now increasing salaries for senior government officials. He is also of the view that with the implementation of the 2019 national budget, it will be necessary to replace some of the austerity measures and loosen some of them to avoid stunted growth in the economy. Mr. Magande says he further foresees the new taxation system for the mines to have an impact on the economy, owing to the fact that there was no consultation with the mines prior to its formulation.
What I think is also going to be something that we must be alert to is this new taxation system for the mines. I was of the impression that before the announcements were made, government had been in discussions with the mining companies, but now it seems they hadn't been any kind of discussion. And therefore, if the discussions start now, they could end up being protracted up to the end of the year, which means really we still have a lot of unknowns in our budget for next year. So all these are going to have an impact on the economy, and that's why I'm saying I think the teams at Finance and the Bank of Zambia must be very alert to be able to adjust as we go along as quickly as possible when one of these parameters affects us.
Home Affairs Minister Stephen Kampyongo says government will leave no stone unturned to get to the bottom of what led to the fracas at the University of Zambia, which left one student dead due to suffocation and another with spinal injuries. Mr. Kampyongo has since appealed for calm among the family members of the deceased and injured student and the nation as a whole as his ministry conducts investigations into the matter. And the minister has condemned in the strongest terms the unruly behavior by youths, among them university students, who verbally abused Information and Broadcasting Services Minister Doris Leah at the church service for the late University of Zambia students Vespas Shimunzila.
Chance to pass my sincere condolences to the Shimunzila family, the University of Zambia community, the honorable member of Parliament from Namala, for the regretful loss of the 40-year student Vespas, who passed on the 5th October 2018. And by the same token, Mr. Speaker, I would like to convey our sympathies to the Chongos, whose daughter equally suffered spinal injuries on the same day. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to place it on the record that Mr. Chongo, the father to Everett, was one of our senior officers from the Zambia Police Service at the Ministry of Home Affairs, and worked with him quite well, so sympathize with him. And last, Mr. Speaker, as I appealed for calm, I would like to strongly condemn the unruly behavior of the youths who accused the Honorable Minister of Information and Broadcasting who went to attend the funeral. My assurance to the two families, through you, Mr. Speaker, and the nation, is that we shall leave no stone unturned in our quest to get to the bottom of what led to that unfortunate disturbance at the Harlem institution.
Meanwhile, Mr. Kampyongo says government owes over 1,300 officers who took part in the 2016 Mobile National Registration exercise a total of 21.5 million kwacha in arrears. He disclosed this in Parliament in response to a question raised by Kabompo Member of Parliament Ambrose Lufuma, who wanted to know whether government was aware that some officers who participated in the mobile issuance of national registration cards in 2016 are still being owed arrears, how many are being owed, and when government will settle the arrears. Mr. Kampyongo says government is well aware of the 1,375 officers being owed allowances and is committed to ensuring that the owed arrears are settled.
That some of the officers who participated in the mobile issuance of national registration cards in 2016 have not yet been paid their allowances. But B, the total outstanding amount owed to the officers is 21,500,000 kwacha only. C, the total number of officers owed, the amount stated in B above, is 1,375. D, Mr. Speaker, government is committed to ensure that officers who took part in the 2016 mobile registration exercise are paid their allowances. In the 2018 budget, government made a provision for the dismantling of arrears for mobile registration. The officers were owed allowances for 3 months, and so far, government has paid for 2 months and is now remaining with 1 month to clear as soon as funds are released from the Treasury. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Government has launched the National Policy on Non-Governmental Organizations, which seeks to repeal the controversial NGO Act number 16 of 2009. Speaking during the launch of the National NGO Policy under the theme, A Coordinated NGO Sector for Citizens' Well-Being, Vice President Inonge Wina says the policy will provide guidance to the NGO sector by ensuring that no one is left behind. In a speech read on her behalf by Community Development and Social Services Minister Olipa Piri, Ms. Wina says the policy will also ensure an effective, efficient and well-coordinated NGO sector that contributes to sustainable national development. She says government recognizes that NGOs play a critical role in national development by complementing government's efforts in the development process. Ms. Wina states that government will, through the NGO policy, provide an enabling environment which will enhance government and NGO partnerships in order for NGOs to maximize their potential. She has since emphasized the need for commitment from all stakeholders in the sector to successfully implement the NGO policy. Speaking earlier, NGO Registration Council Chairperson Chanda Nonde says although civil societies are usually misunderstood whenever they speak with boldness as being critical, they have the heart for the vulnerable and do things in the interest of the people. Constitutional lawyer Sakwiba Skota says the use of tear gas by police during last week's riot at the University of Zambia Unza is prosecutable under the Zambian laws. Mr. Skota says this is if indeed police officers fired tear gas in confined hostel rooms at the university during the fracas. In an interview with Q News, Mr. Skota states that there will be need for police officers deployed to quell the riot to explain how the tear gas canisters ended up in the students' hostels. He states that if police officers intentionally fired tear gas canisters in order that they enter the hostels, such action is criminally prosecutable. Mr. Skota says this means prosecuting the police officers that fired the tear gas canisters and their superiors who ordered them to do so. Mr. Skota says much as riots are violent and usually result in bloodshed, it is unreasonable for many police officers to fire tear gas canisters in a confined room with people inside. He has since stated that both those who used excessive force during the riot and those who instigated the riot must be able to be made accountable.
If indeed they did put the tear gas into a confined room, that certainly is prosecutable. There will be a need for a report from those who had fired it to explain how the canister ended up in the room. Because certainly if it was fired in order for it to go into the room, that is certainly criminally prosecutable.
So if it is prosecutable, who should be answerable at this end? Because I understand
it's the persons who actually fired into the room. That's if indeed that is what happened. And those who may have ordered for the canister to be fired into the room. What is sad about this matter is with regards to the deceased Vespers. Vespers was neither participating in the riot, nor was she the instigator of the riot, nor was she trying to suppress the riot. That is what should make those who caused her death to even be more reflective about their actions. I'm talking about those who caused the riot to begin with and those who may have overplayed their hand in suppressing the riot. Both sides should reflect as to what it has caused, has taken away an innocent life.
UPND Moses Central Member of Parliament Jack Mwimbu has accused the Times of Zambia of being discriminative against local languages in their publication. Rising on a point of order in Parliament, Mr. Mwimbu referred to an article published in the Times of Zambia on 9 October 2018, which was translated in Chinese. Mr. Mwimbu has questioned how the public newspaper has resorted to translating an article in Chinese and not in any other Zambian local language.
On page 2 of this publication, there is an interpretation, I presume, by the Times of Zambia on an article that appeared on the first page of the Times of Zambia and is being replicated on the second page of the Times of Zambia, and the headline, Sadiq Moods DRC Peace. And the article, Mr. Speaker, is in Chinese. There has been no such article in Bemba, in Tonga, in Rosi, or in Runda, or in any other tribe in this country, or in any other language of the people who reside in Zambia. We are aware, Mr. Speaker, that the official language in this country is in English. Why is the government finding it proper and prudent in its wisdom to start interpreting articles that are appearing in the newspapers, to interpret them in Chinese? Is the Honorable Minister of Information, in order to remain quiet and not inform us that Chinese is now an official language in this country and that we can start speaking Chinese?
And Speaker of the National Assembly Patrick Matibini has reserved his ruling on the point of order to enable him study the raised issue.
Order. My ruling is that I need to have recourse to what is being alleged in the point of order, study the same, and also render a measured ruling on the subject. So in that regard, I'll reserve my ruling.
Water Aid Zambia Country Director Pamela Chisanga has observed that the 2019 national budget has very limited measures aimed at addressing the plight of people living in poverty. Ms. Chisanga says considering that the Patriotic Front government prides itself as a pro-poor government, they should look into some of the decisions they make and how they will impact on the people. She says one of the promises the Patriotic Front made to the people of Zambia was to put more money in people's pockets, but that the 2019 budget is not clear how this will be fulfilled. Ms. Chisanga notes that much of the budget is going to be financed from domestic sources, such as taxes. She states that whichever sector these taxes are applied, it is ultimately the ordinary citizens that will pay these taxes. Ms. Chisanga says at the end of the day, the tax burden is going to be passed on to the citizens.
So when you look at the budget, it is not very clear to us where the more money in people's pockets is going to come from. Much of the budget is going to be financed from domestic sources such as taxes. So when you look at that, you ask yourself, where are these taxes going to be applied? And whichever sector these taxes are applied, ultimately, the people that pay for this are the ordinary citizens. So at the end of the day, the tax burden is going to be passed on to the citizens. And so when you're talking about it being a pro-poor government, you have to look at some of these decisions to see what impacts they'll ultimately have on the citizens. And it does look like with this budget, there are very few measures or limited measures that have been taken to address the plight of people living in poverty. We are, of course, being told, the minimum wage has been increased, but then we need to look at what impacts that will have, because a lot of employers are beginning to scale down on labor. People that have domestic workers are also beginning to relook at that. So ultimately, you end up with a high number of people out of employment because of some of these decisions. So engaging around some of these decisions and looking at how do we then support the upper layer, the second layer that is supporting this minimum wage. What measures have been put in place to support that layer?
Minister of Justice Given Ubinda has been challenged to explain to the nation what is delaying the publication of the Constitution Amendment Bill. Young African Leaders Initiative YADI Governance Advisor Isaac Mwanza says Mr. Lubinda should also tell the nation when exactly this bill will be tabled in Parliament. Mr. Mwanza says his organization supports calls for the enactment of the Constitution Amendment Bill into law as soon as possible. He has told QTV News that much as the bill may only be passed into law in next year, Yali feels the process of enacting it should start now. Mr. Mwanza states that people in the country need ample time to debate and make contributions on the contents of the bill before it can be tabled in Parliament.
It may not be too late to consider the bill next year, but the process ought to begin now. We need the adequate time, ample time for this bill to be debated. We all know that the February session is quite a very shorter session, and there will be a number of bills. There will be the bills that have to deal with the VAT replacement, with the sales tax, and a number of other bills. So it's a very shorter period that they will have next session. So what we need to ask is, can we begin the process now? Even if we complete it next year, but we should have begun the process this year, so that people who have ample time to submit to the parliamentary committee, we should be able to debate it as a nation before it is actually taken to Parliament. That would be the better thing the minister can do. It may not.
The Biofuels Association of Zambia BAZ has advised government to use cassava growing as a mode of implementing development in rural areas. BAZ President Professor Thomson Sinkala has told QTV News that cassava is a raw material in the production of biofuels and that enhanced production of the crop will result in the empowerment of rural communities. Professor Sinkala explains that biofuels production is the only sector that involves ordinary people in the value chain, one of which is through growing cassava. He has cited Luapula province as one area where farmers are growing the crop in large quantities without any incentives and are selling to a named beverage company that uses the crop to produce a gas used in manufacturing of beverages. The BAZ president notes that with adequate allocation of incentives to the sector by government, there would be increased market for cassava, which would result in the development of both communities and individuals. Meanwhile, Professor Sinkala has bemoaned the 4% wastage of cassava from the 35% excess cassava produced per year in the country. He explains that a ton of fresh cassava bags produces up to 160 liters of ethanol, while the same amount of dried cassava bags produces about 400 liters of ethanol.
First of all, as of today, according to government records, if you go to Ministry of Agriculture, you see they have records showing the cassava we produce and the surplus. It shows that every year we have a surplus of about 35% of cassava and about 4% is wasted. That cassava surplus is equivalent to 156 million liters of ethanol per year. Now that is grown without incentive. Now, I can right now tell you that the picture is changing in Wapula because a member company called Grow Africa is buying cassava. And they are delivering this cassava to Zambian breweries to make beer. The response, I can show you a couple of pictures here. The response is very good, and more people have engaged in growing cassava because there's a market now.
The Rural Electrification Authority, REA, has continued to positively impact on the lives of many rural Zambians. This is through the electrification of the rural areas which have never had electricity. In Western Province, REA is among other projects working on the Nangwishi grid extension in Sioma district, the construction of the Mongu and Kalabu substations, and the electrification of 5 schools in Nalolo district. In Southern Province, REA is also working on the Makunka grid extension project. We have more in this report.
Before the year 2003, access to electricity was a far-fetched dream for most of the people living in rural Zambia. The establishment of the Rural Electrification Authority, REA, in that year by an act of parliament, however, ignited hope for economically empowered lives. 41-year-old Twembuchi Nalucha and 35-year-old Oscar Mumbua are small-scale entrepreneurs of Kanja village in Sioma district, yearning for the electrification of their area for their businesses to thrive.
Business yakulirwa kona kuoda ni bima fresh wa bya mwateni kakulimiswa hule kwanu lidapi ulifumana kwa hule
tuzisa eswas na mabonanza ni ma radio onokulwa para ku kuvanuliro wangana yakuli magundo wa sola omunyanya onokulya kwa ni light telauna kaserezani.
Inadequate health service delivery and lack of a mortuary at Kanja Health Center has been Teresa Perekero's concern. However, Perekero is joyful that this challenge will now be a thing of the past with the implementation of the Nangwishi grid extension project in the district by REA.
Living where there is no electricity is hard. You see, there is a health center here. People die every now and then, but they bury the same day. But when you have electricity, you have a mortuary.
Through the use of appropriate technologies as a way of increasing access to electricity, productivity, and contribute to improved quality of life, REA is electrifying 5 schools, including teachers' houses, in Nalolo district, one of which is Matongo Primary School. School Deputy Head Teacher Lamek Mkoto says this development will result in increased hours of study for the pupils, while teachers can also prepare their lesson plans at their own time.
I think this is a development in a positive direction, because once we have power as a school, we believe things will change.
In Kalabu district, just like in Mongu, REA is constructing substations which result in a boost in the electricity supply to the 2 districts as well as the Congo and Liumba areas. The availability of electricity in the areas, which is currently a challenge, will make it possible for the setting up of new businesses such as processing plants, rice polishing plants, and sugar plantations, among others.
And residents of Makunka area in Kazungula district have not been left out, much to the happiness of a Catholic priest, Father Vincent Ngwira.
REA is constructing a 35.6 kilometers Makunka grid extension project, and once implemented, will involve electricity supply to Makunka Rural Growth Center, Katumbi Primary School, and Makunko Rural Health Center, among others. REA Chief Executive Officer Pastor Geoffrey Msonda now summarizes his general analysis of the projects inspected so far.
Our estimation is that come May next year, we should be talking about completing this project, everything being equal.
Though challenging, RIA is determined to ensure that its mandate of increasing access to electricity in rural areas from the current 3% to 51% by the year 2030 is met. Chideshe Mwango reporting for QTV News.
The Ministry of Health has signed a memorandum of understanding with the National Biosafety Authority, which will see the ministry provide support to the NBA at the ports of entry. Speaking during the signing ceremony, Ministry of Health Permanent Secretary in charge of administration, Dr. Kennedy Malama, said this is to ensure there is a close monitoring of any products that may contain genetically modified organisms and living modified organisms starting from the points of entry, both inland and at the border points across the country. He says the points of entry include border posts such as Victoria Falls, Kazungula, Katima Muliro, Chirundu, Kasumbalesa, Chanida, Mwami, and Nakonde. Dr. Malama adds that airports such as the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport in Lusaka, Hari Mwanga Nkumbula in Livingstone, and Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe in Ndola have also been included. He says the memorandum of understanding will also ensure that enforcement of food legislation in Zambia is carried out in an effective, consistent, and coordinated manner, which minimizes duplication of official control.
Focus will also be on dealing with the inspection of products that may contain or are products of genetically modified organisms. Such products could be processed foods, grains, seed, and feed. So you can see that this memorandum of understanding does not only emphasize the human aspect of it, it's the plant, it's the animal, and anything which poses a risk or hazard within the cycle, as long as genetically modified organisms are likely to be there. The memorandum of understanding is going to facilitate monitoring, surveillance, and response. It's important to note that other products involve live and viable genetically modified organisms. Such organisms are illegal in Zambia, as it has been referred to, and it could be of biosafety and biosecurity importance to the country.
Speaking at the same event, National Biosafety Authority Registrar Lakson Tonga says the Memorandum of Understanding is aimed at creating synergies in promoting good health and protecting the environment from degradation. He states that the products need to undergo the risk assessment, which is conducted by the Scientific Advisory Committee in order to ascertain safety of such genetically modified organisms and products.
For those intending to export their produce, the National Biosafety Authority will be providing them with a service to certify any of their products as GM-free. In implementing this Memorandum of Understanding, therefore, the National Biosafety Authority will be provided with public health inspectors by the Ministry of Health, and the inspectors being referred to here are those located at selected ports of entry. The inspectors who will be appointed for this undertaking will be trained on the provisions of the Biosafety Act in order to equip them with the necessary tools and expertise required for carrying out inspections on behalf of the National Biosafety Authority. For example, the appointed inspectors at the ports of entry will be provided with a list of allowed products containing genetically modified organisms. For those
Second Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Mwimba Malama, says that Zambia has a potential to grow the tourism sector. Speaking during the launch of the Mailoni Brothers exhibition at Parliament Buildings, Mr. Malama has encouraged the Ministry of Tourism and Arts through National Museums Board to transform the poignant story of the slain Mailoni Brothers into a life-giving experience for the people of Luano Valley and the nation at large in a unique activity termed Program Reactivation in Luano Valley. Mr. Malama says the purpose of the program is to unlock tourism, athletic and business potential of the valley by promoting sports, tourism and training for long-distance runners. We have details in this report.
A handful of people in Luano Valley in Mukushi district can recall almost every day of their lives in enormous detail the notorious Mylon brothers. The Mylon brothers were a trio of serial killers and gang members in Zambia, consisting of brothers Micah, Stefano, and Fabian. They were suspected to be behind a number of murders around the Luano Valley of Central Province and were on the run for a number of years. The Mylon brothers viciously killed 12 innocent people in cold blood since they started their killing spree in 2007. These killings took the nation by surprise, with authorities trying to find out the motive behind, as the brothers did it all secretly, making the neighborhood live in fear. In 2010, government sent over 20 police officers to Luano Valley to beef up security and bring the brothers to book, but to no avail. After 7 years of terrorizing Luano Valley, government security wings managed to bring down this savagery by gunning the brothers down in 2013. Alice Mkoko Salasin conducted the research and shares her findings.
To start with, no significant use of witchcraft was recorded among the brothers during their terror operations. The brothers lived a settled life. 12 people were killed and 1 woman. 10 survivors. We could have recorded actually more casualties, but some people survived, including their firstborn brother who was attacked for abandoning the brotherhood. Then the Mylon brothers were named in order of seniority: Stefano, Fabiano, Mika, three of the six sons of the Mylon Chipokolo, and Janeti. They grew up with the Mylon brotherhood, attended primary school at Mika. Then he had this ambition to rule the valley. And I always say that from the way we analyze objects or artifacts in the museum, the skill when someone is crafting something, the knowledge that is involved in the making of those objects, the way they integrate or interact with the environment, we can actually safely say they were intelligent. If given an opportunity to have gone to school, those were going to be technologists or engineers. We will see more in the exhibition.
Speaking during the launch of the Mylon Brothers exhibition, Second Deputy Speaker Mwimba Malama wants the Ministry of Tourism, through National Museums Board, to transform the poignant story of the slain Mylon brothers into a life-giving experience for the people of Luano Valley and the nation at large in a unique activity termed Program Reactivation in Luano Valley.
However, it is quite relieving to learn that out of the valley of darkness, the Ministry of Tourism, through the National Museums Board and in close collaboration with the Zambia Amateur Athletics Association, would like to transform the poignant story of the slain Mylon brothers into a life-giving experience for the people of Luano Valley and the nation at large in a unique activity term Program Reactivation in Luano Valley. The aim of the program is to unlock the tourism, athletic, and business potentials of the valley by the following. Number 1, promoting sports tourism and training for long-distance runners. Number 2, the youths of Luano Valley, who are natural mountain sliders, would also be given an opportunity to be enlisted in the national team for long-distance runners such as marathons.
Professor Francis Msonda is National Museums Board chairperson.
The Mylon brothers is an issue that raised so much concern and curiosity among Zambians. Through this Mylon brothers exhibition, members of the public are encouraged to raise more questions, and hopefully this in turn will precipitate more interrogations of our research findings. We wish to encourage more scholarly research on this topic in order to generate wider and deeper understanding. Museums are often considered as institutions of social change. They exhibit on current topics, emotional issues, for the inspiration of visitors who view these exhibitions, and it's our hope as National Museums Board that we will generate sufficient interest leading to a better understanding of the people of the Luano Valley and their environment.
5 years down the line, the Marlon brothers are back, but this time in a movie.
This movie could have actually been launched, but they did not have the information which could guide this movie into making it a real story. What they had, you told me you had what? Fiction. And we said, no, don't make it fiction. You can make it a real story because it's a living story.
The movie is meant to highlight the history and show the efforts by government wings to fight these gruesome crimes. But one wonders, is it really necessary to remember these brothers? Favorite Kalando reporting for QTV News in Lusaka.
Information and Broadcasting Services Minister Doris Thea has advised young people in the creative arts in the Southern African region to work together to grow the industry. Ms. Thea says this is one of the ways they can help create the much-needed jobs among the talented young people in the region. She notes that no government in the region is capable of creating jobs for all its young people, hence the need to grow industries such as creative arts and film because it has the potential to create employment. Ms. Celia has appealed to young people to take advantage of every opportunity made available to them, such as the Talent Factory Academy, to create jobs for themselves and their peers. Speaking in Lusaka when she addressed local and foreign artists after conducting a tour of the Talent Factory Academy for the Southern African region situated at Zambia Institute of Mass Communication, ZAMCOM, Ms. Leah also called upon the business sector in Zambia and the region as a whole to support the initiative by MultiChoice to grow the film industry and ensure that it contributes to economic growth in Zambia and the Southern African region as a whole. And veteran artist Jeff Stally says the young people in the Southern African region have a lot of talent that requires exploring and supporting. The Talent Factory Academy has attracted students from countries across the Southern African region, such as Angola, Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Zambia.
As the young people, this is how it should be done. You need to collaborate across borders, get to know each other as a youth group, so that you can do bigger things in the future. We in Africa, in Southern Africa, don't want to remain behind, and we are counting on the young people who are going to have this training, but also the music industry go together, because there's always music in television, in filmmaking. That's part of the creativity, and we're really looking forward to these performances, whatever they are, and I'm sure that at the end of it, we want to see big movie producers from Zambia, from the region, and collaboration with musicians, but also in the region among the young people. So you have to be famous beyond your own borders so that the economies of scale, and that's when the business sector across countries will respond and support the movie industry in this region. Then there'll be jobs for all of us. None of our governments can find jobs for everybody. So we need to create our own jobs.
These young people, they are an amazing lot. I'm not flattering them. I work with young people, so I don't flatter them. You know, each one of them comes from different countries, right? But already being here in half a day, you know, it's like they belong to each other. It's like they've known each other all their lives. You see, you can't believe they are Mozambicans and Angolans and Malawians. These young people are very gifted. I mean, they're not professionals. They're
To end the news, we take a look at stories making headlines. Government has been advised to take seriously the latest International Monetary Fund IMF Financial Stability Report, which has warned of dangerous undercurrents that threaten the global economy. Home Affairs Minister Stephen Kampyongo says government will get to the bottom of what led to the fracas at the University of Zambia last Thursday, leaving one student dead. And WaterAid Zambia has observed that the 2019 national budget has very limited measures aimed at addressing the plight of people living in poverty. On that note, we come to the end of the news. From me, Diana Sumbwe. Thank you for watching.